Hi, I'm Keith Vanderclay from Amina Technologies, and today what we're going to be doing is install the ALF100 sub. The ALF100 sub is an amazing sub. It's got tremendous bottom end and really fills out that deep bass that people are looking for when they want to have a 2.1 system. And in this case we decided, okay, how can we best hide the port on an ALF sub? Because a sub has to port into the room in order to really get that feeling of deep bass into the room. And so we thought, well, okay, we can put it into the skirting board or the baseboard and maybe cut a little hole in there and then have it vent into the room, or maybe put it above the baseboard. And that way, you know, we don't have to do anything with the baseboard, or we can hide it behind the TV. And that seemed to be the best solution. So we thought, okay, the TV is going to be about 48 inches or about 1.22 meters above the floor. And so we want to have the port slightly hiding behind the bottom lip of the TV. So we can either turn the sub upside down or right side up, whichever way we want to. The port is where it's going to activate the room. So I think it's best that we put it in behind the TV and literally build it up to the top and then have the port slightly above the bottom edge of the TV, and that way we all hear the sub, but we don't see it. And that makes for a completely hidden 2.1 system, or even, you know, any full surround sound system. So let's go and see how we can go and put this in. And the first thing that we want to do, of course, is cut a hole, because we want to know that we're not going to run into trouble. Well, there we go. Look at that. We got lots of insulation in there. That's great. Having the insulation in there really makes sure that, you know, things are going to be nice and quiet by the time that we put the sub in there. Let me just push that back and find the stud. That's 15 and a bit. Just put it over there. So that's one stud size. And let's see, 14 inches would be the other side of the stud. So, ooh, that's a tight one there. Let's make sure that we've got enough room. There we go. Now, why did I measure that? Okay, so the back of the sub that fits into the cavity is 13.5 inches or 345 millimeters, 34.5 centimeters wide. It is, however, only 89 or 87 actually, 87 millimeters deep, which is 3 3/8 inches. That means it fits into a conventional 2x4 stud bay. That's great, because most homes have in their walls 2x4 studs. That's the minimum that they usually have in there, unless of course you live in New York where everything is 2 inches. And that's when we start putting subs into ceilings, etc. So this in-wall sub is going to give us a fantastic little spot that we can put it in. Let's just make sure that I've got enough room going up and down. There's nothing in the way. Oop, what do we got here? Feels like I've got a fire break over here, and that's about 20.5 inches down. So I got a fire break somewhere around here. Let's make sure. Oops. Somewhere around there means that I can't go any deeper. So that means that the bottom of the sub has to rest on that plate, that fire break. That should be no problem. Let's see how far we're going to put the TV up. Oh, look at that. The TV is going to be right here. The port of the sub is about 2 inches above that. This is going to be perfect. All right, let's go for it. We can start cutting. So we know that the sub is 16 1/8 of an inch, which is about 41 centimeters wide. That means that the aperture that I'm going to have to cut is going to be 41. Oh, it means that I'm going into here. I'm going to have to make sure that I'm going to be halfway across that stud. And then let's see, that's that fire break over there. And I've got a total of 42 inches, 107 centimeters going up. Will it fit? 42. Oh, it'd be perfect. We're about 8 centimeters, or about two and a bit of an inch from the top. So we should fit perfectly. Let's get a ladder so we can actually get up there and start drawing where we're going to be putting the sub. All right, so let's actually find out exactly where that fire break is, and then we can calculate where the bottom lip is going to be in comparison. So the fire break should be, oh, look at that, right there. That's where the fire break is. Okay, so that means we can take the bottom lip from its resting spot down 2 centimeters. So we'll give it a little bit of extra room right there. And we'll take our square and square to the sides. We're going to draw a line right across. And we know that the sub is 42 inches tall. So we know that the very top is going to be 42 inches from that bottom line. And that's where our top cut will be. Oh no, it's time to get on this ladder. And again, square to the sides. We draw a line and come across. Now the sub, as I said, is 16 1/8 wide, or in other words, 41 centimeters. So we'll take it from there and we go to 41 centimeters. And we go from the top. And if everything works out great, this should be our opening. That means we'll go and have the port right there. So that is where the sub is going to be. We can start making our cut. So let me start over here, and I'm going to cut right across on the line. Put a little stop over here so I don't go too far. And now we're going to go down. Cuts like butter. And now for the bottom cut. Remove the screws that are holding this into place. Now, I don't really have to save these screws because the sub comes with their own screws. And so if we cut everything right, Ta-da! And look at that. We magically have got the cable in there. So that's where the sub should fit. However, the studs are not exactly aligned like that. So we're going to have to see if it can actually fit in there. We're also going to have to remove some of this insulation because the sub will not fit with the insulation. So we'll take this out and we shall just dry fit the sub. Take the cable and put it out of the way for a while. And let's see if this fits. Ah, we're in luck, I think. Yes, sir. All right, so that's our next move. We're going to put the sub into the wall. Now, the sub has its connectors on the top over here, so that means we're going to make a connection at the top, and we don't want all that cable hanging and banging about. So we want to make sure that we trim back as much cable as we can, move it back into the wall if we have to, and put this sub up where she will nicely fit into the hole. So can I move that up? Yes, I can. So let's just cut that cable. And we're going to get it ready to terminate. Now usually I like to run 12 gauge wire to a sub. In this case we're running 14 gauge wire. And it really doesn't matter because the distance that we're running this to is actually quite short. So I can get away with 14 gauge wire. Again, we use strippers to strip back about 10 millimeters. Or maybe that was 12. Twist the wire so we don't end up with strands touching each other later on. And let's just, for security, dry fit so that we know that this is going to work perfectly. And look at that fit. That's going to be brilliant. Okay. Now, as I said, we want to put some bracing in behind here so that the sub also holds on to the top. And we can do that with a noggin. So I'm just going to go and get a noggin that comes with the box and screw that into position. So here we got that. It's called the mounting strip. I've got some screws here. By the way, the sub does come with all the screws you would need. And we're just going to go and put this on the back of the sub. And we're ready to start putting it up. So I'm dragging in my beautiful assistant, and what better assistant than the box that the sub came in? That works, doesn't it? Okay, because there is no way that I can hold on to the sub while I'm doing the wiring. So I'm just going to place this underneath so it's in a good position. Put the sub on top. Have it rest on the box. I've got plenty of room there. Take my ladder and make the connection on top. There we go. The blue wire goes to the black terminal, the red wire goes to the red terminal. That means that I'm phase positive on red. And I'm ready to start putting the sub in. Nothing simpler than putting the noggin in behind. And she can't fall out. So, the hard part is done. At this point, I want to make sure that I've got enough room all the way around, like we did with the loudspeaker, to make sure that this will never crack. The unit does come with a whole bag full of screws, so you don't even have to go out to the hardware store to get any more. And we start screwing the sub in. I usually go from the center out. The Baltic birch is treated with a primer that allows us to mud straight onto the Baltic birch. It is also chamfered on the edges, just like a piece of drywall would be, so that when we have another piece of drywall butt joining it, it actually matches right up, and we can use that to layer the tape in. Here, of course, we have the fire break, so we want to make sure that both the sub and the drywall below it are actually well stuck to the noggin that is in behind here. If there's a piece of drywall just sticking out, just move it back in, and now it's time to do the top. You might think this is a lot of screws going in here, but it's also a lot of power that we're going to be putting through here. So we want to make sure that nothing is going to buzz when we actually have this sub in the wall and plastered in. So again, we're going to go and sweep test this sub as soon as it's set in and see if we got any problem areas around the area that might need an extra drywall screw or two to do away with any buzzing or unwanted resonance from other pieces of drywall. So finally, remember that noggin at the top that we put in? Well, that's where it comes in handy, so that this piece of drywall will not end up cracking ever, no matter how much base we put through it. And there we go. So that's it. The sub is in, ready for mud, tape, and final mudding over top. That's about it. That's all it takes. So this is going to be perfectly covered by the TV. We're going to have a speaker off to the right, speakers off to the left, and we got our 2.1 system for our little home cinema. Cheers, mate.